Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Thursday, August 2nd, 2018. Today we're going to recap yesterday's baseball games, look ahead to today's games, discuss the disastrous Urban Meyer situation. I have some strong thoughts about that. And do my NFL power rankings as we head into tonight's Hall of Fame game between the Ravens and the Bears. That'll be at 7:30 tonight on NBC. With Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, and Michelle Tafoya on the call. All right, baseball from yesterday. The Nationals defeated the Mets 5-3 as they improved to 54-53. The Mets dropped to 44-61. Tommy Milone gets his first win of the year. He's 1-0. Noah Syndergaard drops to 6-2. Kelvin Herrera gets his second save as a National. The Orioles defeated the Yankees 7-5 as they improved to 33-75. The Yankees dropped to 68-38. Alex Cobb improves to 3-14. Sonny Gray drops to 8-8. This was just an atrocious game by the Yankees and Sonny Gray all around. Lazy defense. They were clearly looking ahead to tonight's big showdown against the Red Sox. They completely looked past the Orioles. That was that for sure. The Tigers defeated the Reds 7-4 as they improved to 47-62. The Reds dropped to 48-60. Dan Verhagen improves to 2-2. Sal Romano drops to 6-9. Shane Green gets his 23rd save of the year. The Indians defeated the Twins 2-0 as they improved to 59-48. The Twins dropped to 49-58. Carlos Carrasco improves to 13-5. Matt McGill drops to 2-2. Brad Hand gets his second save as an Indian. The Athletics defeated the Blue Jays 8-3 as they improved to 64-46. Toronto drops to 48-59. Sean Manaea improves to 10-7. Marcus Stroman drops to 4-8. The Astros defeated the Mariners 8-3 as they improved to 69-41. Seattle drops to 63-45. Dallas Keuchel improves to 9-9. Wade LeBlanc drops to 6-2. The Cubs defeated the Pirates 9-2 as they improved to 62-45. Pittsburgh drops to 56-53. Cole Hamels gets his first win as a Cub. Nick Kingham drops to 5-6. The Rays defeated the Angels 7-2 as they improved to 55-53. The Angels dropped to 54-55. Jacob Faria improves to 4-3. Nick Trapiano drops to 4-6. The Royals defeated the White Sox 10-5 as they improved to 34-73. The White Sox dropped to 37-70. Jacob Junis improves to 6-11. Dylan Covey drops to 4-7. The Cardinals defeated the Rockies 6-3 as they improved to 55-53. The Rockies dropped to 58-49. Austin Gomber improves to 1-0. Kyle Freeland drops to 9-7. The Dodgers defeated the Brewers 6-4 in 10 innings, courtesy of a walk-off homer by Yasmani Grandal. Dodgers improved to 16-49. Milwaukee drops to 63-48. Dylan Floro improves to 4-3. Matt Albers drops to 3-3. Marlins Braves postponed makeup date August 13th. Today's games you have 1 o'clock Angels Rays. Andrew Heaney and Hunter Wood. 1:15 Rockies Cardinals. Antonio Senzatella and Miles Mikolas. 2 o'clock Royals White Sox. Brad Keller and Reynaldo Lopez. Marlins Phillies. Pablo Lopez and Nick Pivetta. Reds Nationals. Tyler Mahle and Max Scherzer. Yankees Red Sox. MLB Network. CC Sabathia, Brian Johnson. This is going to be perhaps the biggest series of these two teams of seasons. The Red Sox can either pull away in the American League East. This could be a split and still be 5.5. Or the Yankees can take advantage of Chris Sale's injury and win this series. Chris Sale and Aaron Judge were fully healthy. I would say these two teams split. Chris Sale is not healthy. Neither is Aaron Judge. I think the bigger loss secretly is Chris Sale because he's their only pitcher that, in my opinion, that has pitched well against the Yankees this season. Rick Porcello had one good outing and one bad outing against the Yankees this year. And everybody else has just been blah or really, really bad being David Price, and blah being the likes of Eduardo Rodriguez, Brian Johnson, and Drew Pomeranz. So it's going to be an interesting series. This is probably going to be a split, but I'm going to be a little bold and say the Yankees find their way closer to the American League East and take advantage of Chris Sale's injury a little bit. Giancarlo Stanton has been hitting well. Gleyber Torres is starting to get hot. This offense has actually done a nice job without Aaron Judge, and meanwhile, the Boston Red Sox offense has struggled since the All-Star break. CC Sabathia is pitching in this series as well as J. Happ. Both of those guys have good numbers against the Red Sox this season. David Price has bad numbers against the Yankees this season. Luis Severino had one bad start against the Red Sox and two good starts against the Red Sox this year. He's pitched against them 3 times, so 2-1 against the Sox is Severino this year. Although he's pitched poorly of late, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Red Sox were to defeat the Yankees on Friday night. So it's going to be interesting to see how the series plays out. Back to the rest of the slate of games. You have the Braves and the Mets. Mike Faltiunas and Jason Vargas, 8 o'clock. Orioles, Rangers. Andrew Kachner and Yovani Gallardo. That is probably going to go over the run total. Padres, Cubs. Robbie Erlin and Mike Montgomery. 9 o'clock, Brewers, Dodgers. Julius Chastain and Clayton Kershaw. 9:40, Giants, Diamondbacks. Madison Bumgarner and Zach Greinke. Last but not least, 10 o'clock, Blue Jays, Mariners. Undecided for Toronto. Curious to see who they start against Felix Hernandez. Urban Meyer's situation is pretty murky right now. This is the biggest story in sports right now. Ohio State placed Urban Meyer on administration leave yesterday due to the fact that last week he fired Zach Smith, his wide receiver coach, due to the fact that Smith was involved in the domestic violence incident with his now ex-wife. He hit his then-wife multiple times, once in 2009 when Smith was on Meyer's staff in Florida, and once in 2015. That was more recent. Urban Meyer was asked at Big Ten Media Day whether he knew about the situation, and he said no. And then once he found out, he fired him. And then Courtney Smith, who's now the ex-wife of Zach Smith, did an interview with former ESPN employee Brett McMurphy and said that she told Shelley Meyer, who's the wife of Urban Meyer, Shelley works at the university as a nurse in the university's hospital and is also a counselor, and that's how she found out about it through Courtney. And now Urban is under these allegations to whether his wife really told Meyer and Meyer was lying at Big Ten Media Day or not. I think that Meyer knew about it and was lying to the media on Big Ten Media Day, and that is going to lead to some serious consequences for Meyer. He, as I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, placed on administration leave. And honestly, I think Urban Meyer will no longer be the head coach at Ohio State come the start of the season. Offensive coordinator Ryan Day will be the team's acting head coach. And most people were surprised about the Buckeyes picking Day to be the acting coach over former Rutgers coach Greg Schiano, who's on Schiano's staff, as well as former Indiana coach Kevin Wilson. But Schiano was involved in some off-field issues in the past as well. So the team chose Ryan Day. I think this could perhaps ruin the team's season. I tweeted yesterday that I don't think that Ohio State will make the college football playoff in the wake of this, especially if Urban Meyer gets fired or is suspended to start the season. Anytime a team, whether it's in the pros or in college, is dealing with a tumultuous situation, it never ends well. And the team doesn't perform because of it. It's not, and people say like, oh, and make up other excuses for why a team's underachieving. But if there's a off-field problem, that contribute a lot to a team's poor play. Although the Patriots got away with it with Deflategate. It's the only example I could think of where a team actually got away with it. But let's face it, they got away with it because Russell Wilson didn't hand off the ball to Marshawn Lynch. That's why they got away with that. Or else there would have been this reputation of, oh, the Patriots lost because they weren't focused. It was because of Deflategate. But yeah, that's like the only exception I can think of where a team was not distracted by off-field or off-court or off-ice problems in sports. And you've seen this with Rick Pitino at Louisville. He gets fired due to the fraud situation, and the team did not have a good year last year. I don't think Louisville made the tournament last year. And there's other examples I can come up with where a team did not perform well in the wake of an ugly situation. All right, we'll get more into this tomorrow, assuming that more news breaks out. Now I'm going to do my NFL power rankings as of right now. Go 32-1. 32 is the Miami Dolphins. I do not think this team is going to be good at all this year. Adam Gase is a coach on the hot seat. Ryan Tannehill coming off an injury. We'll see how he performs. I think that is one of the quarterbacks on the hot seat because I think that the Dolphins were interested in drafting Baker Mayfield last year. They didn't draft a quarterback. There was talk they were going to draft even Josh Allen or Josh Rosen. But yeah, I don't think they're high on Tannehill at all. There's not much talent on this roster. They did add some wide receivers, but most of them are above 30, such as Danny Amendola. And this team also lost Jarvis Landry as well. 31 is the New York Jets. I think this was a team that overachieved last year despite going 6-10. I think the franchise knows they overachieved because they moved up in the draft to get Sam Darnold. I do think Sam Darnold should start right away. I think that is an unpopular opinion. You move up to 3 to get your franchise quarterback. I think he should be starting right away. I love Darnold. I think he was the best quarterback in the draft. The Jets have a solid defensive core that's all young guys. And they drafted pretty well on that side of the ball, and then they drafted Darnold to be their franchise quarterback over the next decade plus. But they're this low because I just don't think they're that good of a football team. And Todd Bowles is another coach, in my opinion, that is on the hot seat. Number 30 is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are a team that went 0-16 last year. I think they're going to improve, obviously. They drafted Baker Mayfield number 1 overall. I do not think he'll start right away. I think Tyrod Taylor will start for the Cleveland Browns to begin the year. And if he struggles, maybe they will go to Baker. And they did add some talent in the offseason. Jarvis Landry among the talent this team added. And they might sign Des Bryant. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Browns do this season. I picked them under when I did the over-unders because I thought 4.5 was too high for them. And I mean improvement by they could go 4-12 or 3-13 and not be 2-14 or 1-15 instead of 0-16. Number 29 is the Indianapolis Colts. This roster is getting more talent. I like their first round selection in the draft. Quentin Nelson. I think that guy's going to be a stud. And the fact that he fell to the Colts at 6 was a monster win for that franchise. They have a new head coach in town. We'll see how that works. Andrew Luck's playing for the first time in years, it seems like. A lot of people are expecting him to be one of the top flight quarterbacks in the league once he's back. I think it'll take him some time, and maybe he'll get back up to that level. We'll see. But this is still the worst team in the AFC South, in my opinion. Number 28 is the Washington Redskins. This team, I think, is a team that is in a bit of trouble. They have some talent on both sides. Alex Smith is somebody that's aging. I think that Alex Smith isn't necessarily an upgrade over Kirk Cousins. I think they're about the same. They have no top flight receiver, although they think Jamison Crowder can be that for them. The defensive side of the ball, there's some young guys that I like on the defense. This team has a tough schedule, and Jay Gruden is yet another coach that's on the hot seat. Number 27 is the Buffalo Bills. This is a pretty surprising ranking for a team that made the playoffs last year. But the reality is that this team overachieved, and I think they knew it. There's a reason why they traded up to get Josh Allen. And I think Allen, there's a chance that he starts right away and he's great, or he could just fall flat on his face like Mitch Trubisky did last year. There's some good talent on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm a big fan of the head coach Sean McDermott, but I think they're going to take a big step back after making the playoffs last year. Number 26 is the Chicago Bears. I think this is a franchise that is on the rise. I don't know if it'll necessarily be this year. Mitch Trubisky, somebody that I think is going to be a breakout player in the NFL. He could be this year's Jared Goff. I think this defense will be respectably good with a lot of young talent. The Bears really have to get Roquan Smith signed. I believe he's the only first-round pick that hasn't signed yet. Number 25 is the New York Giants. A lot of people expect improvement from this team, as do I. Their schedule is very difficult, in my opinion, this year. I don't know if this team will actually finish 500 or better because their over-under's at 7. I took the under on them, although, like I said on that podcast, that felt like a push to me. Saquon Barkley's absolutely going to make life easier for Eli Manning on the offensive side of the ball. The Giants tried to improve their offensive line. They brought in Nate Solder to be their left tackle. I think they're moving the incumbent Eric Flowers to right, who has struggled throughout his career. And they drafted Will Hernandez to help improve that line as well. And I think Hernandez will prove to be a steal and prove to be somebody that should have been picked in the first round. Odell Beckham Jr. is back, so that offense should be better. Defense, I think, should be better too, with some of their guys being healthy. Olivier Vernon wasn't healthy last year. Landon Collins wasn't healthy last year. Janoris Jenkins should be a player that should rebound from a poor season a year ago, as well as cornerback Eli Apple. I do think the Giants should consider bringing back Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie at somewhat of a discount, but we'll see about that. Number 24 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're a team that wants to improve, but they're in a very hard division, arguably the best division in football in the NFC South, or certainly the best division in the NFC. I'll say what division I think is the best in football in a couple of minutes once I get to the first team from a certain division. Tampa Bay made some additions to try to improve themselves, especially on the pass rush with Vita Vea, with the drafting of Vita Vea, and then the trade acquisition of Jason Pierre-Paul. So their pass rush should be better. Jameis Winston suspended the first 3 games of the year. That certainly doesn't help the Bucs in any way, shape, or form. Number 23 is the Cincinnati Bengals. Their team has a very low over-under at 5.5. That team should be better than 5 or 6 wins. Andy Dalton, somebody that gets criticized due to poor playoff performance, and a lot of people feel that he's a quarterback that's on the hot seat, as well as Ryan Tannehill, like I mentioned before. I'm not a huge Dalton fan, but at the same time, I'm not a quote-unquote Dalton hater by any stretch. He's a guy that's solid and helped lead the Bengals to a couple playoff appearances. His injury probably cost the Bengals a chance to advance past the first round a few years ago. And there's a lot of talent on this team on both sides of the ball. Joe Mixon and A.J. Green as your running back wide receiver, and a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball too. Number 22 is the Denver Broncos. And the AFC West, in my opinion, is the best division in football, with 3 teams, or even 4 teams if things break right for the Broncos, that have a chance to finish above 500 and perhaps make the playoffs, although 4 teams from the same division can't make the playoffs. But this is certainly a loaded division. The Broncos, in my opinion, are a team that should be better than last year. Vance Joseph, to me, is a coach that's on the hot seat, even though he just got there last year. They went 4-12 a year ago with a lot of talent on that roster. They think Case Keenum will be an upgrade at quarterback. We'll see. Because last year I feel was a career year for him. I think they should have drafted a quarterback last year, but they didn't. They took Bradley Chubb, who I think was the best defensive player from the draft. And I believe he'll help them. And I believe that he has a great chance of winning the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. Just from playing on the same defense as Von Miller will certainly be a big help to him. Number 21 is the Arizona Cardinals. This is a pretty high ranking for them. It can't be forgotten that they finished 8-8 last year. This is a team that feels like that finished 6-10 or 5-11 last year, but they went 8-8 in Bruce Arians' final year. And they have a new coach in town as well. I think Josh Rosen should play right away, but we'll see. I think they'll hand the keys to Sam Bradford, who's been inconsistent in his career due to injuries and whatnot. But I do think Josh Rosen will be a great player in the future for them. Larry Fitzgerald's still in town. They still have a solid defense, even though they got rid of Tyrann Mathieu in the offseason. Number 20 is the Detroit Lions, new head coach and Matt Patricia. Matt Stafford's still around. They got rid of some pieces in the offseason that I really didn't love. Ziggy Ansah's still around to lead the way defensively. This is a team that I think could either be a surprise playoff contender in the NFC or it could completely fall on its face. Number 19 is the Baltimore Ravens. They're a team that I think is in a little bit of a make-or-break situation. John Harbaugh is, to me, a coach that's on the hot seat. Joe Flacco's a quarterback that's on the hot seat, and you could just tell with the drafting of Lamar Jackson, who will certainly be the quarterback of the future in Baltimore. So there are the tea leaves there that they're ready to move on from Joe Flacco. Their offense really doesn't have any significant pieces. Their defense is young and has some players on it. Number 18 is the Seattle Seahawks. People are probably thinking, whoa, why are the Seahawks this slow? The Seahawks are this slow because they're dealing with a lot of turmoil right now. A lot of retirements, a lot of holdouts. Richard Sherman's gone. The Legion of Boom is falling and crashing. And all this team pretty much has right now is Pete Carroll, who's a coach on the hot seat, and Russell Wilson. He was one of the top quarterbacks of the league to this day. Number 17 is the San Francisco 49ers. They're a team that I believe is being very overhyped coming into the season courtesy of Jimmy Garoppolo, who just got paid in the offseason. Sometimes guys slack a little bit after they get paid. We'll see with Garoppolo. I am a big fan of Garoppolo, and I'm a big fan of Kyle Shanahan. They made some interesting moves this offseason. They signed running back Jared McKinnon. They drafted some nice players as well to improve themselves on both sides of the ball. This is another team that I wouldn't be shocked if they were one of the top teams in the NFC. On the flip side, I wouldn't be shocked if this team absolutely fell on its face and went 6-10 or 5-11. But to me, the Niners feel like an 8-8 team that's about a year away from doing some special things in the league. Number 16 is the Dallas Cowboys. People probably will say, oh, that's too high. Well, they went 9-7 a year ago, mostly without Ezekiel Elliott due to a suspension. This team probably should have been worse than 9-7, but they were 9-7 last year. Their defense still isn't very good, although they have some young players on the defensive side of the ball that should help them. Taco Charlton, to me, is somebody that I think could have a little bit of a breakout year after a so-so rookie season a year ago. Dak Prescott is somebody that has to have a good year for Dallas, or else there's going to be some whispers about whether they'll look to draft a quarterback in the draft this year or not. I think Elliott's going to come back and be an absolute monster after the suspension last year. Jason Garrett's another coach, in my opinion, that's on the hot seat if this team underachieves. 15 is the Tennessee Titans. This is a team that I won't be surprised takes a step back next year, or this upcoming season, I should say. Marcus Mariota has to have a better year than he did last year. I thought he was a little disappointing last year because many people thought he'd be the MVP of the league last year. Boy, that certainly wasn't the case. They got rid of DeMarco Murray to hand the keys off to Derrick Henry full-time. I think Henry will have a nice year. They brought in Dion Lewis to help them in the backfield as well. They're a team that has some young players that look to improve on disappointing years from last year. I think the defense should be better, too. And I like the new head coach, Mike Vrabel. I think he'll do a nice job. 14 is the Oakland Raiders. They're a team that some people think will bounce back and make the playoffs, and a team that others think that will fall flat on its face. I am leaning towards the latter. John Gruden is a huge wild card. Will he be a good coach in his second stint with the Raiders and his first time back in coaching in 10 years, or will he completely fall flat on his face? He made some good hires to his staff, and I believe Derek Carr will have a better year than he did last year. I think this Khalil Mack thing will get solved and he'll sign a contract extension eventually. And I think there's going to be some younger guys that will improve, such as Carl Joseph, the safety. I think Amari Cooper will improve. I think the addition of Jordy Nelson will help this team as well. And we'll see what Marshawn Lynch has left in the tank. 13 is the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a high ranking for a team that is starting a second-year quarterback that's unproven. This is a team that's, I think, under a little bit of pressure. I think Mahomes is under a ton of pressure. After trading away Alex Smith, we'll see how Mahomes does. This is a team that traded up to get Mahomes. So that's why Mahomes is facing so much pressure, I think, coming into the season. But I do think he'll be one of the breakout players in the league. It certainly doesn't help him that he doesn't have a true number one receiver. I don't think Sammy Watkins is that. I mentioned that on the Over Under podcast. They have some good players still left on defense, such as Justin Houston. And they have the talented secondary as well. Although they lost some key pieces to that talented secondary. Number 12 is the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers is back. I personally think this is a bit of a high ranking for Green Bay, but this is where they happen to land. Like I said, Rodgers is back. Let's hope he stays healthy the whole season. I think they'll miss Jordy Nelson, although the signing of Jimmy Graham is an improvement at the tight end position. But my question about Graham is whether he's the New Orleans Jimmy Graham or he's been the Jimmy Graham that he was in Seattle that really wasn't featured, or let's face it, it just is past his prime. This is curious to me why they would sign Jimmy Graham and let go of Jordy Nelson. I would have brought in Jimmy Graham and kept Jordy Nelson, but that's not how it works. But if you ask me would I rather have Jordy Nelson or Jimmy Graham right now, I'd rather have Jordy Nelson, personally. But that, I think, will come back to bite them a little bit. I think they'll miss Nelson. That means Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb have to step up this year. And the running backs for Green Bay have to step up too. Number 11 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Made the AFC title game a year ago. They look to improve and look to get to a Super Bowl. Blake Bortles, to me, is the quarterback facing the most pressure in the league this year. Although you can make a case for Dak Prescott and Eli Manning and Jimmy Garoppolo, Russell Wilson, even Tom Brady, you could argue that for, or even Aaron Rodgers. But to me, the answer of the quarterback facing the most pressure this season, the answer is Blake Bortles. Bortles had a so-so year last year. He had some moments good and bad. I think he's going to determine whether they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender or not. Their defense is great. The receiving core is okay. Leonard Fournette's a stud running back. Doug Marrone's an excellent head coach. I think Tom Coughlin's done everything right in Jacksonville, except for maybe giving Bortles that contract extension. But that will prove this year whether Coughlin was right to give him the extension or not. Number 10 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They're a team that most people expect to be really good this year, including myself. But that division's really good, and there are some injuries on the Chargers that have really hurt them already. The tight end's out for the year. Their cornerback Jason Verrett's out for the year, both due to torn ACLs. Phillip Rivers is still one of the better quarterbacks in football, although he's at the tail end of his prime. This team still has Melvin Gordon on it. Keenan Allen's still around. So, should be an interesting year for the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 9 is the Houston Texans, a little high for a team that went 4-12 a year ago. That's courtesy of Deshaun Watson coming back and J.J. Watt coming back. And this team is loaded on defense. With Watson's presence, they're great offensively. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the better receivers in football. Will Fuller is a great deep threat guy. Their running backs are pretty good. So I really expect a big year from the Texans. A big year from Watson, assuming he stays healthy, because I think Watson's going to be a special player in this league for years to come. Number 8 is the Atlanta Falcons. They're a team that was close to upsetting the Eagles in the division round last year. I'm not a fan of Steve Sarkisian, their offensive coordinator. He's obviously on the hot seat, and that can even put their coach Dan Quinn on the hot seat, but I wouldn't put Quinn on the hot seat quite yet because he made the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they were darn close to beating the Eagles last year. I expect them to be a good team again this season. Matt Ryan's still an elite quarterback. He was the MVP a couple years ago. Devontae Freeman is a great running back. And they have a great receiving core. Julio Jones better end his little holdout. If not, then this team's in trouble. The drafting of Calvin Ridley was brilliant. Part of that due to what they think about Jones and his future. I think Ridley would be great on Atlanta. And they also have some other very good receivers on their team as well. Number 7 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was tempted to put this team lower due to the fact of Le'Veon Bell's holdout. But even without Bell, this roster is still pretty talented on the offensive side of the ball. Ben Roethlisberger's still in his prime. He's still an elite quarterback in this league. Antonio Brown is an elite wide receiver. James Conner's a nice backup running back, and I do think he is the future starting running back of Pittsburgh, assuming that Le'Veon Bell moves on from the Steelers in the near future. Juju Smith-Schuster was outstanding as a rookie last year. I don't expect a sophomore slump from him because of Roethlisberger, and he'll get more passes due to the presence of Brown if Brown's double covered. So this offense is loaded. This defense, on the other hand, is a defense that, in my opinion, is a bit underrated. They have some good young players on that side of the ball. It's sad what happened to Ryan Shazier, but I still think this defense is not bad, per se. 6 is the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, to me, are a team that still has a very good roster. Cam Newton's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I think Christian McCaffrey is a year 2 breakout player. The receiving core isn't that great, but McCaffrey's presence certainly helps that. Their defense is absolutely loaded. A lot of studs on that side of the ball. Luke Kuechly is still around to lead the whole way. Their secondary isn't all that great, though. But their pass rush is still going to be good. Ron Rivera's done an outstanding job the last couple seasons. There was one bad year in there where they lost a lot of close games, but their fortunes turned this past season when they made the playoffs and could have beaten New Orleans in theory. That would have been a big what if they beat New Orleans, who is actually my number 5 team on the power rankings, the Saints. I believe they should be co-favorites in this division with the Panthers and the Falcons. You can make a case for any of these 3 teams to win the NFC South, starting the best division in the NFC. The second best division in football behind the AFC West. Drew Brees is still playing at a high level. Alvin Kamara, will he have a sophomore slump? I think the presence of Brees might ensure that he won't. I think having an elite quarterback always is a big factor of whether you have a sophomore slump or not. Odell Beckham Jr. with the Giants was a good example. Eli Manning had a great year in Odell's second year in the league, and Odell obviously had a great year that year too. But I'm just saying that from a receiver's perspective, but the same can be said for a running back that can both carry and catch the ball from the backfield. So I believe a sophomore slump is out of the question, sort of, for Kamara. The suspension of Mark Ingram is pretty big for New Orleans. They're going to miss him for 4 games, so I won't be surprised if the team gets off to a bit of a slow start with a couple hard road games on their schedule. Although they're certainly a team that's capable of starting better than 2-2 even without Mark Ingram's presence. Their receiving core is very good. Michael Thomas had a career year last year. Their defense is very up and coming. Marshawn Lattimore's the leader of that secondary. Cameron Jordan is the leader of that pass rush. So I'm interested to see how the defense, after a breakthrough unit as a whole last year, performs this upcoming season. Number 4 is the Minnesota Vikings. They're a team that was sort of lucky to beat the Saints in the division round last year, courtesy of the big touchdown catch and run by Stephon Diggs. And then they got blown out by Nick Foles and the Eagles in the NFC title game, and Case Keenum was exposed in that game. So they moved on from Case Keenum. They also moved on from Sam Bradford and Teddy Bridgewater. They bring in Kirk Cousins, who is probably better than those 3 options. And something smart Minnesota did this offseason was lock up all their core young players, pretty much. Whether it was Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter, Stephon Diggs. And I believe even Adam Thielen got paid too. So they had a busy offseason to lock up all their young stars. They locked up Kirk Cousins on a 3-year deal, and I believe it was fully guaranteed. They're certainly the favorites to win the NFC North. I believe this will be a popular pick by many to win the Super Bowl this year, with all the talent on both sides of the ball. Number 3 is the New England Patriots. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are still around. Yes, there's a little bit of turmoil in the offseason. They somehow managed to avoid it. I believe Rob Gronkowski will eventually be paid and back on this team. The drafting of Sonny Michel, I think, will prove to be one of the better draftings. I think he'll help this offense tremendously. They did lose Danny Amendola, but the comeback of Julian Edelman will help them tremendously on the offensive side of the football. Their defense isn't great, but they still have some talent on that side of the ball. Patrick Chung's still in that secondary. And on the defensive line side of the ball, they still have some players on that side of the ball, such as Malcolm Brown and Adrian Butler. Those are two solid defensive players for them. Danny Shelton's going to be a good addition to this team. Kyle Van Noy's a solid linebacker. Dante Hightower's still around too. So I think this team will be fine off defensively as long as Tom Brady and the offense continue to roll as they've been rolling since Tom Brady has been there pretty much. Number 2 is the Los Angeles Rams. I think this is one of the more talented teams in football heading into this season. They have to get the Aaron Donald situation fixed, and I believe they will. He's arguably the best defensive player in the league. This defense is great. They added Ndamukong Suh to go alongside Aaron Donald. They made some great additions on both sides of the ball as other than Suh. They added Marcus Peters to the secondary as well as Aqib Talib. They got rid of Alec Ogletree, traded him away to the Giants. But that's okay. I still think this defense is going to be great. And on the offensive side of the football, they traded for Brandon Cooks and also extended him as well. And Todd Gurley is arguably the best running back in football. Jared Goff had a breakout year last year. I think he builds on that. Sean McVay is just an outstanding coach. This is certainly a Super Bowl contender. And number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles, your reigning Super Bowl champions. To me, the big question is, when's Carson Wentz coming back? Nick Foles has to play at a high level, in my opinion, while Wentz is out, because if Foles falls flat on his face, I think this team's in trouble. Although they have a lot of talent on the skilled position side. Darren Sproles is still around as a running back. And they also have Jay Ajayi, Wendell Smallwood. So they're loaded at running back and at receiver. They have Nelson Aguilar, who's been solid. Alshon Jeffrey's a big-time threat. Mike Wallace, I think, will be a nice addition, as well as Marcus Wheaton. Zach Ertz is one of the more underrated tight ends in the league. And on the defensive side of the ball, they're pretty much loaded. Michael Bennett's there. Fletcher Cox is still there. Derek Barnett, I think, is somebody that'll have a better year. And their secondary is pretty good. Malcolm Jenkins is one of the more improved defensive backs in the league over the last couple years. Ronald Darby is a solid at corner. Jalen Mills is a good corner. And their linebacking core is pretty solid, too. Jordan Hicks is an underrated linebacker from this team. So, yeah, Philadelphia is loaded, and they're going to be even better once Carson Wentz comes back from his injury. That's it for the power rankings, and that's it for today's podcast. I'll be back tomorrow recapping all the baseball action. We'll talk more about Urban Meyer if any more Urban Meyer news breaks within the next 24 hours. I'll also be doing every team's offense ranking in the NFL as I continue this NFL series. Today was the power rankings. Yesterday was the over-unders. Tomorrow's the offense power rankings. Saturday's defense power rankings. Sunday is the quarterback rankings, and that begins the individuals. And then next Monday's running backs. Next Tuesday's wide receivers. Wednesday the 8th is tight ends. Thursday the 9th is offensive linemen. Defensive lineman is Friday the 10th. Saturday the 11th is linebacker rankings. Cornerback rankings is August 12th. and the NFL individual position rankings, and August 13th with the safety rankings. And on August 14th, I'm going to count down the top 100 players in the NFL. So that's it for today. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.